going. All right. Thank you all for being on. Thank you, Healthy Planet, for having me back. We have a lot of topics in here that are really close to my heart, things that I love to talk about. One of the most important things is stress. And stress affects our digestion, and of course it affects how we look and how we feel about ourselves. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about one of my favorite products that can supplement our way to better health even when we're undergoing stress. And so what you'll see are actually, some of my favorite things to talk about and some of the things that we keep in our house all the time. But first, just a little bit about Garden of Life. If you're not familiar with us, what I love about working for and educating for Garden of Life is that we have real certifications. We have real third-party audits that keep us accountable. And they're not perfect. Nothing is perfect, but they're the best that we can offer to you as a customer and a consumer, where at a glance you know that the ingredients are clean, that they're well sourced. And so first and foremost, and it's not even here, we're a B corporation, a benefit corporation company. One of really just, maybe there's 13 or 14 supplement companies now that are considered benefit corporations, meaning that they don't just look to money and finances and revenue as the bottom line. We look at social accountability. And so it's about how we source our ingredients. It's about how we structure our company. It's about having diversity and equity in our management and in our sales team. There's so many aspects in the B Corporation. You should certainly look it up, Benefit Corporation. And that's really the overarching certification that I always say, keep watching that certification. We're doing well if we maintain that B Corp. We get audited every 2 years, and you have to have a score of 80 or higher in order to maintain your certification. And we share company. We keep company with some other really good brands that I'm sure you will recognize when you take a look online. The other is Certified Organic, Non-GMO Project Verified. We are always striving for these two certifications whenever possible. If something is vegan, and it is vegan the way that Vegan Action, vegan.org, will certify it, then it will have that seal. If it's gluten-free, you'll either see it through the Gluten-Free Certification Organization or through NSF, both which have pretty equivalent standards for the parts per million of gluten that are acceptable. Our whey protein, truly grass-fed, is now a third-party certification under a greener world, which you may be familiar with. If our products have truly been vetted to be kosher, you'll see Kosher Star or the U, NSF certification for sport, and Informed Choice for sport. These are all third-party audits that really speak to traceability and transparency of our supply chain. I've come to that. I love that things are certified organic, but I've come to be probably the most impressed with Non-GMO Project, because it's not just testing a final product that a lot of non-GMO organizations do. It's actually saying, what are the high-risk ingredients in this product? And so, for example, an herbal extract could be high risk when you ask what alcohol was used to extract it or what was used to extract it. And if it's ethanol, ethanol can be genetically modified corn, as you well know. So that becomes a high-risk ingredient. And only Non-GMO Project goes all the way upstream in the supply chain to test that kernel of corn that was grown to make the alcohol that extracted the herb. And so these are the little secrets of the way that things are made that Non-GMO Project delves into and finds out if the supply chain itself is free of genetically modified organisms. Because it's not just about, if some of that makes it into your final product. It is about, we do not support that kind of agriculture. We do not support the spraying of glyphosate across what that does to people who live there, who work there, the food that they eat there, their environment, their soil, their water, their bees, everything. So, that is just one example of what Non-GMO Project means for us. And so when we get into looking at optimization of health, there are areas that I feel that everybody needs supplementation. I feel like everyone needs a probiotic. Everyone needs D3. I'm speaking to Canada, so I know y'all need D3. And everyone needs omega-3s. because for the most part, nobody gets enough of any of those. We just don't live a lifestyle in which we get enough of those. If you do, you're unique and good for you, and keep living that life. But beyond that, you could do all of those things perfectly. And if you cannot manage your stress, it can all be for naught. You can have the perfect diet you can eat the cleanest food, you can live, in the cleanest place, drink the cleanest water. But if you're under constant stress because of real or imagined threats to your well-being, then you can do the integrity of your gut and the integrity of your nervous system, the integrity of your immune system, and affect your health negatively despite everything else. So sometimes we have to come in and supplement and hack our way into managing stress. And if that is really a major factor in what's going on for somebody, that really has to be addressed first. It can affect your sleep quality. And if it affects your sleep quality, you're affecting your immune system, you're affecting your nervous system, right? So when we talk about supplementation, how can we use them to optimize health and wellness? And we're going to go into some examples of these. So improving the gut-brain axis, this means that, your brain, as far as we know, doesn't have a microbiome. It shouldn't. I don't think there's supposed to be bacteria in your brain, but your brain definitely benefits from things made by microorganisms in the rest of your body. And those signaling compounds get into the brain, across the brain barrier, and have an effect. Glutathione is bacterially produced, okay? Short-chain fatty acids like butyrate is bacterially produced. All kinds of neurotransmitters, hormones, endocannabinoids, signaling molecules, all of these types of things make it to the brain. And so there's this communication highway between the gut and the brain. And the microbiome does a lot of the talking. If it is under stress because it's getting the poor quality of food, it will send messages to the brain. And unfortunately, we do in a modern world grow the wrong kinds of microbes with a diet high in sugar, white flour, starches, processed foods. You're growing pathogenic or unhealthy microorganisms that continue to send a message to your brain to keep eating those things because they're having a party. They're pretty excited about that. So they're going to keep telling you to eat Cheetos and cake and cookies and all of these things. And when we have an imbalance of blood sugar, when we have an imbalance of weight, when we have an imbalance in our nervous system and our anxiety and depressive symptoms, this is often due to an imbalanced microbiome. So these things all become interrelated. We can use supplements to improve the microbiome, to improve blood sugar balance, to correct macro and micronutrient deficiencies. And when we improve all of that, we also improve the immune functioning and the signals to the immune system. We improve the hormonal balances. It's been very well doing that. And prebiotic fiber supplementation definitely improve hormone conversion and hormone signaling. We need to have the right fat in our diet, and sometimes we have to supplement that. Sometimes there's a call for just cutting out all external fats in your diet, all fats that you might get eating out, and just focus on the healthy ones you might supplement. It's been hot and cold here, so I might do that a few times. And then Garden of Life never hacks into your metabolism. We are never ramping you up artificially, but what we can do is provide supplements that do stimulate activity in your fatty tissue and that do encourage you to burn more fat for energy. And what I love about that is it's not just that you're burning off the stubborn fat areas that you don't want around anymore. It's that when we burn fat for energy, we also are getting more energy out of fat than we do out of carbohydrates. And that's pretty impressive. That means that you get twice as many calories from a gram of fat as you do carbs, and that means you'll go twice as long and you'll have that much better blood sugar balance. And so improving thermogenesis means burning fat for energy. Improving your health span means that if you're going to live a long life, you'd better live that life healthfully. Why live a long life and be unhealthy? Why live a long life and be uncomfortable? Why live a long life and be ill and be on medications all the time or be in a with a cane or a walker or a wheelchair. That's just no fun. That's no way to live it. So the idea of improving our health span, I don't really want to live a long life if I'm not healthy. So let's talk about your gut, and let's talk about the microbiome. There are things that microbes do in our gut, and they're called probiotic if they are for life, if they're for your health and in your health span of your lifespan. And these kinds of microorganisms protect us against the pathogenic ones, the ones that we might take in food if we had bad food, the ones that might grow inside of us and overtake the good ones because, the environment was more beneficial for the bad types of bacteria. There are bacteria that they all create a certain pH in your gut. And if it's too alkaline, you're going to have an unhealthy lining of your gut, and you're not going to absorb your nutrients very well. So the right kinds of microorganisms actually acidify the lining of your gut. And they do so by secreting things like acetic acid or lactic acid. And when they secrete these acids at the lining of the gut, you get better management against pathogens, you get better absorption of nutrients, you get better transition of things like short-chain fatty acids from the gut into the bloodstream, going where it's supposed to go in the body, right? And so it's not just about not having gas and bloating. It's not just about having healthy bowel movements. It's very much about your metabolic functions, because what you make in your gut gets into the cells elsewhere in your body and affects how well you function. So really, we are what we eat. And what we eat, what it is composed of, is so important for your health. It's not just about total calories. It's not just about how much fat, how much protein, how much carbohydrates. It's about other things like micronutrients that make a huge difference. And what do microbes like to eat? Microbes in your gut love to eat fibers, resistant starches, and brightly colored antioxidants called polyphenols. And so your diet really has to be rich in that. And what kind of foods are rich in that? Your vegetables and certain brightly colored fruits. And so really you cannot get away with not eating those things. And if you're not eating those things, you need to supplement them. Most of us in Canada and in the United States get not enough fiber. We get around 15 grams of fiber a day. And in the healthiest microbiomes on the planet, people are getting 50, 100 grams of fiber a day easily. And so this is just something that we don't really ever get enough of. Even though I supplement, I know I still don't get enough fiber. And if you eat a lot of meat and fat and not enough fiber and vegetables, you will have a very alkaline lining of the gut. It's actually the consumption of vegetables and fibers that creates an acidic lining of the gut, and that balances flora and everything else that we talked about. Your immune system starts in your gut. I've talked about this a zillion times, but if you haven't heard it before, know that we in science and in the microbiome studies, that 2/3 of your immune system is in the gut. It's actually been said for a very long time, and it used to be referring to your human cells, your mammalian cells called Peyer's patches, and your gut-associated lymphoid tissue, which are the tissues of the gut that interact with the immune system and start up an immune response, and that then communicate with your white blood cells and other things in your bloodstream. But we now know that your microbiome actually plays an enormous role in the immune system functioning of the gut as well. So it's not just your human cells that stimulate the immune system from the gut. It's the microbiome. And if we feed them the right food, they produce the right signaling compounds for us and for our immune system. So that's really where it has to start, right? And so if you have stress, even if you do all of these other things correctly, you will disrupt your microbiome. You will damage the lining of your gut. We now know that actually you can overproduce certain endocannabinoids, so cannabinoids that we make. You can overproduce them in response to stress. They can oversaturate receptors in the gut lining, and that over-tonification pries your cells apart and creates a leaky gut. It creates intestinal permeability. So we always knew that stress did that, but the idea was that it was some kind of cortisol response. It is actually an endocannabinoid system response. And that overproduction of endocannabinoids that we normally think of as beneficial tells you, again, there is such a thing as too much of a good thing. And it turns out that CBD and, all kinds of, kava, cacao, echinacea, all kinds of herbal adaptogens, all of these things help to mitigate that excessive tone in those receptors and restore tight junction integrity, but so do certain strains of probiotics. And that's what I think is fascinating. We're starting to see that very specific strains, besides just a healthy microbiome overall, can restore that gut integrity. And nothing should be leaking into your bloodstream. It's a very, very detailed, careful system of gates and channels of what should get into the bloodstream and what should not. Proteins shouldn't get into the bloodstream, only di and tripeptides, short chains of amino acids. Fatty acids of only a certain length should get into the bloodstream. Bacteria should not be in your bloodstream, and yet they do get in the bloodstream when you have a leaky gut, and that is kind of a mild subclinical sepsis. And so stress can cause all these kinds of symptoms as a result of all the imbalances that it causes in our micronutrient status, in our macronutrient status, in our nervous system, in the way that the brain tells the gut that there's a problem, and the gut responds with this leakiness and this imbalance, and then you get this vicious cycle between the gut and the brain, in inflammation, in eating up your antioxidants that you make in the line of your blood vessels. Nitric oxide, you made it in your blood vessels as a free radical scavenger, as a major antioxidant. But if you have stress, it gets used up, restoring flexibility to the lining of your blood vessels so you don't get high blood pressure. And so if you don't have a good high antioxidant diet, rich in greens, leafy greens, beets, and things like that, you don't have enough nitric oxide to maintain healthy flexibility to your blood vessels. You get high blood pressure. Depression and anxiety, definitely, there are definitely external issues that contribute to that, but there are chemical imbalances that can start from in utero, before you're even born, that make it difficult to maintain, a sort of stable homeostatic mechanism in your nervous system. So all of these areas are definitely affected by stress. So let's talk about a few of the great probiotics that we offer at Garden of Life and how they work on this way, how they can tap into this and be a support for you. This was one of the first products that we formulated after I joined the company in 2014. There was a lot of research then already on the gut-brain axis and on the idea that we might actually be able to affect anxiety and depression by altering the health of the microbiome, which I found fascinating, and I found it to be so hopeful. If it's not you, it's someone you know who's debilitated by anxiety or depression. And even many of us who are highly functional still suffer the effects of that anxiety. We suffer moments of lowness and depression, and this is affecting us in a myriad of ways. Children experience it, and it can be absolutely paralyzing in people. I know several people for whom anxiety is absolutely paralyzing, and during this whole pandemic and people being stuck inside, I think a lot of people found out that they can have panic attacks, that they can have anxiety, that they can have depression, who might not even have felt it before. So this product, when it came out, made me so excited that we were on the cutting edge of utilizing strains that have been through clinical research and themselves, with no other changes, showed tremendous benefit to a person's management of anxiety and depression and their response to stressors. So these things, Lactobacillus palaticus, Bifidobacterium longum, these numbers, identify them genetically. Their genome has been sequenced so that they are a specific numbered strain, so that you can tie that specific genome sequenced strain of probiotic to these actual benefits. That's very important in research. 300 milligrams of organic ashwagandha. Me and ashwagandha were like this for life. Ashwagandha works well for almost everyone. There are a few people and types of people for whom it does not work well. We call that pitta toxicity, or high pitta in Ayurveda, where your body's not clearing out hormonal toxicity well. And that person typically doesn't do well with ashwagandha. That might manifest as PCOS, or it might manifest as somebody who has a lot of weight around the middle that is hard for them to lose, or just someone who even ashwagandha kind of goes in the direction of testosterone for them, and they get, women will get more hirsutism, male sexual characteristics, or just feel like enraged, like she's just gonna, knock someone out when she takes ashwagandha. Everyone else, ashwagandha gives deep dreamless sleep. It is it's a tonic, it's an adaptogen. It, especially in studies, normalizes your output of cortisol. What is cortisol for? Cortisol is for dumping sugar from your liver into your bloodstream to get to your muscles to help you run or fight or freeze in response to a threat or a stress. So, but if you're thinking, oh my gosh, my taxes, oh my gosh, my job, oh, my family, my relationship, and you're sitting at your desk and you're not running, all of that adrenal output and all of that blood sugar and everything just stirs around inside of you like a poison. And that then causes these kinds of symptoms. Okay. Yes,
Amber, we're having some comments that they're having some challenges with the audio. I'm wondering if maybe we try shutting off your video just to try and improve the audio quality.
Will do. How are you hearing it, Lindy? Can you hear me pretty well now? I thought it was just in response to the ashwagandha. Okay, so just let me know how that's doing. Okay, so in response to stress, people get all of this anxiety and all of this depressive symptoms. Okay, great. And they did a study where they gave, the research group, these two organisms, Lactobacillus sylvaticus and Bifidobacterium longum, and they give it over 3 weeks. And they addressed their baseline, and then after 3 weeks, addressed how they were responding to these stressors. So in just 3 weeks, they saw statistically significant improvement in these 3 areas: abdominal pain, nausea, and vomiting. If you've ever had anxiety, you know that it can cause tremendous nausea and reflux and irritation to at least the stomach, if not even further down, creating abdominal pain. Some people even throw up, kind of like stage fright, right? And so these symptoms were improved, but this is subjective, right? Additionally, people's symptoms of just how they self-reported on mood control improved. But what I thought was the most phenomenal was an actual objective marker in urinary free cortisol, 13.5% reduction in urinary free cortisol, meaning that these microbes in their microbiome were helping them to break down the cortisol before they urinated it out. And so this is tremendous. 2 strains alone, no other changes in your diet, no other yogurt or anything else like that. A placebo-controlled study, people actually got this reduction of urinary free cortisol. And then the ashwagandha, of course, also is normalizing your cortisol excretion. So the ashwagandha kind of takes that edge off. Instead of thinking, oh my gosh, I'm getting eaten by a lion, you're like, oh, it's my taxes, I'll get to it tomorrow. You have a little bit of better perspective on your stressors. Okay, great. Sounds like our sound is better. So the ashwagandha in here also is definitely helping to work very synergistically with that probiotic. And I'm going to back up here just to show this again. You've got all these strains of probiotics, 16 different strains, some of them very specific to mood, some of them like Gramnosis HN001, very specific to the lining of the gut and the immune response. And that so every single one of these strains is labeled, genome sequenced, and has been thoroughly researched and vetted. And that's something you need to know about our doctor-formulated line of probiotics. That is always the case. Per capsule, 150 milligrams of ashwagandha, The dose that you take is 2. That gives you 300 milligrams a day. The studies on ashwagandha at 600 milligrams a day, either in 2 doses or less. That gives you not only that improved cortisol response, but over time, your thyroid stimulating hormone levels, your triglyceride levels, your blood sugar, your hemoglobin A1C, your fasting insulin, your lipid profile, all of these things improve. So that tells you how much of an effect stress has on those areas of your body and of your health. All right. Let's go on to urinary tract plus. I don't know if you've ever had it happen. You get stressed out. This happens to women when they get married all the time, because for many reasons, but not the least of which is planning the wedding and the stress that goes into that. It can happen right before a big exam. Any of you that are students and have ever had that happen, it can happen when you go on a vacation because you worked so hard trying to get on that vacation, and then this comes out. For people who are prone to frequent recurrent urinary tract infections, this is the probiotic for you, because not only does it have 500 milligrams, the perfect amount of a cranberry extract in it to prevent bacteria from sticking to the urinary tract lining, it also has supportive probiotics to help your immune system overcome an infection and create the right microbiome to keep the urogenital system healthy. So this is the second most common infection in the body. It's more common in women, but men do also get it. And more it's being recognized that men get urinary tract infections, and that a lot of them are latent and they don't know it until they get a prostatic infection. Most urinary tract infections are caused by E. coli. There's also a Pseudomonas infection and a Klebsiella. E. coli is particularly sensitive to cranberry proanthocyanins. They cause these little legs, if you can see them in this picture, to not be able to stick, and they wash out with your urine, and your immune system can then kind of get a handle on that infection. And so the cranberry is broken up into skin, seed, flesh, and juice, and were studied to find out which of those actually had that anti-adhesion activity. That is the greater part of this Patcran extract. So it's very, very specific. They showed a over 24-hour anti-adhesion activity, as high as any cranberry extract, as high as any cranberry juice, but lasting more than twice as long, lasting well beyond 24 hours. So you take 2 capsules in the morning, you get your 500 milligrams of Patcran, and that lasts you until your next dose the following morning. And this is something that you should continuously do if urinary tract infections are something that is recurrent for you, especially in response to stress. And then for women that have a just, typical stress, hormone, lifestyle-induced changes in their floral balance, and this then stresses you out even further, all of our women's probiotics support healthy balance in the urogenital system. What is happening in your lower bowel causes what is happening in the vagina and in the urinary tract. So you have to really balance out the rectum, the colon, the lower bowel, in order to have balance in these other areas. And they are very much interrelated. You really don't have floral balance issues if you don't have digestive balance issues. So again, always rhamnosus, always reuteri in a female floral balance product for women. Lactobacillus fermentum, very good for the immune system. BL818, very good for the colon and supporting the immune response and the enteric nervous system response in the colon. So this is just a every day for women, just to keep everything right, even when you didn't know it was going wrong. And the studies on Lactobacillus rhamnosus and Lactobacillus reuteri, it turned out that women didn't even know that they were out of balance yet. They did not have symptoms of yeast infections, urinary tract infections, vaginosis. They were like, no, I'm fine. And a lot of them had the preclinical symptoms, the preclinical signs once they looked at the microbiome of those areas. They were given these probiotics and restored to normal. So it's helping you even before you know that you need help. That's what I love about it. And, when we are stressed, we don't digest our food as well. And sometimes you have to right there. Why is that? So it's this thing, if you remember back to school, the parasympathetic versus the sympathetic nervous response. the fight, flight, or freeze syndrome, the response that your nervous system creates in response to a stressor or a threat, shuts down your digestive system. You know, if you've ever watched deer that get spooked, they just poop and run, right? And that can happen to you, or everything can just shut down. It's not important that you digest your food. It's not important that you have a bowel movement. It's important that you run, escape, get away from it, remove yourself from the situation. So your nervous system and your endocrine system do not really know the difference between you're being chased by a grizzly bear and you're not getting your taxes in tomorrow, okay? Or you're worried about a project that is due. Your endocrine system cannot differentiate that when it is creating an adrenal response. So shutting down the digestive system is the first thing that, when it happens over and over again, leads to poor digestion and poor gut health. So many, many times we have to recommend digestive enzymes to people when they start their journey to better health. And you don't have to think that you're going to be on it for life unless you have some pancreatic insufficiency or some kind of a disease of the pancreas or of the liver. Or some people with no gallbladder, they do need fat digesting enzymes like lipase for life if they don't do very well or if they like higher fat foods. But this is something that I like to think of, that you call on it when you need it and then you discontinue it when you're doing better. But if you're stressed and you're eating and you get bloated, you feel heavy, things go through you too fast, and a digestive enzyme can be super helpful. This is the only certified organic digestive enzyme out there. It's full of 29 different fruits and vegetables, beautiful organic fruits and vegetables that are in themselves enzyme rich, and they're raw produced, meaning under 115 degrees Fahrenheit. And then these 13 digestive enzymes with their exact potency measurements are added. This is the first time anybody ever created non-GMO project verified full spectrum enzymes. And when we managed to work with our partners to create this, we started using this in our creamers, our greens powders, and everything else. And if you see this full spectrum of digestive enzymes anywhere that's non-GMO, it started with a very exciting mission, typically creating a microbial fermentation. Those microbes themselves might be genetically engineered, or they might be fed a fermentation of genetically modified foods, beet, corn, soy. These are top GM crops, right? And they're common fermentation media for microorganisms. So that this is certified organic and non-GMO project verified and vegan and gluten-free is phenomenal. Super clean, because, hey, if you're having a hard time digesting, the last thing you want is more toxins in your body. And so if you're also having a hard time digesting food, if you have gas and bloating or constipation, diarrhea, alternations, or either of those, you're not going to be getting as many nutrients from your diet that you should. And that is, again, a very, very common situation. So I don't take a multivitamin all the time, but I do take one when I'm more stressed, when I have a lot going on, when I feel like I'm multitasking, when I'm flying more. I make sure when I travel to take these things with me, because I know that I may be using up my nutrients faster. And especially if I'm not eating at home, I may not be getting all the nutrients that I should be. If you don't know about the My Kind line yet, really look into it, because not only is this a clean, certified organic, non-GMO project verified multivitamin, it is also a multivitamin where every vitamin and mineral comes from actual plant food. So there's a list of 10 different botanicals that all of these nutrients, almost all of them, come from. The D3 is from lichen. The B12 is a methylcobalamin B12 from microorganism fermentation. That is and it's standardized to its iodine content. Yes, dear.
We are having some audio issues again.
I don't know
know
why.
if you have any thoughts on your end.
I'm on the phone, other than the fact that it's windy. But this is the best I can do. So
okay, super. I just wanted to check to see if there was anything additional we could do on that. Thank you.
Okay. There may be also, each person's connection may also be an issue. If there's an issue, you missed something, you can ask for a repeat on something that you missed, and we'll cover it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks for helping me out. So another thing that we tend to be very deficient in and that we use up very quickly is magnesium. So not only is it not in the soil the way that it should be, it's not in our food, therefore, the way that it should be, the way that it used to be, and we use it when we are stressed, and we use it when we run and work out and sweat. And so it's obviously responsible for so many different things. This is just a short list of all the things that magnesium is important for. Magnesium levels determine whether or not you can make D3 from sun exposure. You know, they can play a huge role in headaches, migraines especially. They can play a huge role in hormone balance, PMS, and in your ability to regulate your blood sugar. There's a lot of things that you can be experiencing where if you really get down to the bottom of it, it could be something as simple as magnesium. And so typical modern diet is very low in magnesium, partly because of the foods that we eat and partly because of soil depletion. So, you know, a lot of times we have to take a high amount to catch up to what our optimum health might be. If you try to jump in with that much, though, you'll probably be running to the bathroom quite a lot. There are a lot of foods that are rich in magnesium, but a lot of them require proper preparation. Hemp seeds, pumpkin seeds, almonds, split peas, black beans, all good sources, but need soaking at the very least, if not sprouting or fermenting. Spinach and chard, you can't have them raw and expect to absorb the magnesium because there's oxalates and phytates and beans and dark chocolate that are conditioning absorption of minerals. So things have to be prepared properly. They should be wilted, or you can have them raw with an acid, lemon or vinegar, that kind of a thing. Massaging your greens with some kind of an acid can help to make that more bioavailable. Avocado is one of those things that it's not, you know, a ton of magnesium, but it's pretty bioavailable. And for those of you that are not vegan, your animal products, it's very bioavailable, as is calcium. Figs can be a good source, but as you can see, your top sources of magnesium are things that you have to treat properly in order to really get. You can't just chew on hemp seeds. You really should, if you can sprout them, it's the very best way to access that, actually. And the thing about minerals like magnesium is that they are always in that food. So the only way you lose it is if you steam something and overcook it and it gets in the water and you toss the water out. If you're sauteing, if you're treating it with an acidic dressing, you should not lose those minerals. Okay, so most magnesium that is out there is mag oxide, mag chloride, even mag citrate can kind of run through you. You need to have some magnesium that is made in the same way that nature makes it, the way that you get it from food. And so mineral chelates, as I said, in animal products are pretty bioavailable because these minerals are attached to amino acids, right? And in certain whole grains and nuts and seeds, they're very bioavailable if you have treated them right, cooked them right, or fermented them or sprouted them correct. So like in our protein powders, we always sprout, for example, or soak a very long time. So we made our doctor-formulated magnesium as an amino acid chelate combined with some mag citrate. So you're actually getting 3 different pathways into the bloodstream, the way that is the gateway through the cell, the gateway around the cell, and then the amino acid gateway, because this magnesium is bound to brown rice protein. There are 18 amino acids in brown rice protein, and therefore you have all those 18 amino acids bringing that magnesium into the bloodstream in their very dedicated highway into the bloodstream. So amino acids, single amino acids, di and tripeptides get exclusive access to the bloodstream, and now they're bringing the magnesium with it. And things like branch chain amino acids like leucine, isoleucine, and valine are all going to go straight to the muscle with this magnesium tagging along. So I love to think about that when I think about how well it can cause your muscles to relax and address your stress issues. If you take a lot of this, you will get a looser stool response. So some people like to do that because that helps to keep them from being constipated. It improves their transit time. But if you're having loose stools, it means you're not absorbing the magnesium. So take it at an amount, maybe half a teaspoon to start with, quarter teaspoon to start with, where you're actually absorbing it and not running to the bathroom. Very, very important. And if you're not getting enough, not just magnesium, also micronutrients, trace minerals, right? Phytonutrients, polyphenols, all of this stuff that I said the microbiome loves to munch on. If you don't have a diet rich in those things, you have to supplement. We do both. We love our vegetables. We have amazing farmers markets here. We have friends who grow produce. All of this is just, I feel so fortunate where we live in Montana, but I don't always get it in a day because I'm busy, I'm doing other things. So I go to the raw organic perfect food when I feel like I haven't gotten enough greens, and I up my intake of all of this just by making a drink. Actually did it earlier. I had some Irish moss, sea moss, and our alkalizer detoxifier, perfect food, and a little bit of electrolyte blend. So just trying to get everything in a supplement when I'm busy. The thing you should know about alfalfa, barley, wheatgrass, canoe grass, all of the oat grass, all the grasses that we juice is that they're coming from Utah on a family farm that's certified organic. And the owner of that farm also developed the method of juicing and drying. And it's a very short time from cutting to the juicer, and then the drying facility is very gentle. They're pumping at a very low rate, 1 gallon per minute, at the top of basically a converted silo, and just a very low fine mist spray of these juiced greens is drifting to the bottom of that silo and drying as it goes, not being overheated. So these, not only the grass juice powders, but these fruit and veggie powders are also juiced and dried very gently, with everything always being measured to maintain highest nutrient content, plus a sprout blend. This is probably the most, it's like the dark horse of our product lines. A lot of people don't wind up maintaining greens in their basket of things that they should be taking for optimum health. This is the product that has probably changed my health and my family's health the most, is having green powders around all the time. And we always have them around. I think my husband probably goes for the chocolate greens every single day, at least once a day. I take it kind of on an as-needed basis. So that hacks into your day when you aren't getting enough brightly colored vegetables, micronutrients, phytonutrients, polyphenols, you know, all of these little trace minerals that are so crucial. So you have the original, there's no stevia in it, no flavor or anything. You have the Energizer with cordyceps and yerba mate, pomegranate. You have B12. You have this one, which is basically the original with cacao, lots of dark chocolate, and the little stevia to sweeten it. So this is my husband's favorite. My favorite is the alkalizer detoxifier. All right, let's talk about fat. So a ketogenic diet is not for everyone, but we can learn a lot of lessons from it. One of the lessons I learned from it was to really love and appreciate what I eat. This taught me as I started to change my ratios of fat, and I could only have certain things, those carbohydrates and proteins, and no, obviously no added sugars. I'd eat a certain amount of berries, blackberries, blueberries, raspberries. I'd have my cashews or my macadamia nuts. I'd have a little bit of dark, like 85% chocolate, dark cacao chocolate. And I learned to really treasure these things. So that taught me a lot. But what I also learned was how important it is to really balance the kinds of fats that we consume, and that we have the ability to become what is called metabolically flexible. And so I incorporated medium chain triglyceride oils into my diet, and even without changing anything else, medium chain triglyceride from coconut starts to help reduce your blood sugar load in your bloodstream. It helps you to start to make ketones. It helps you to start to convert to burning fat for energy, which helps you balance your blood sugar and maintain energy levels, and therefore helps you make better food choices and not pick so many sugary foods. So there's many ways to get into what is called a state of ketosis. You can fast, and after 48 hours, you're pretty much in that state. You can actually, even overnight, at least 12 hours or more, you start to get into ketosis. You typically have to use up all of your glycogen in your liver and in your muscles before you start burning fat for energy. And that can happen during a fast. It can happen if you do an overnight fast and exercise before eating. It can happen with longer fasts, and it can happen by changing those ratios of fat in your diet. It's kind of complicated. I'm sure you've heard about it, but one of the great hacks into that state in your cells is incorporating more good quality fats into your diet. And I think for me, if I could just get everybody off of these fats in the right-hand column, and canola, soybean, corn, and cottonseed oil are your biggest genetically modified crops, and we don't need them. I don't eat cottonseed. I don't eat rapeseed. Why would I use that as a cooking oil? Why would I use that in cookies? Why would I use, why am I making cookies? And then soybean and corn, neither of them are fatty. Peanuts really are a legume also. We only get oil from these things when we roast them and solvent treat them. Why do we do that? There's so much else out there to get healthy fats from, whether you're vegan or omnivore. You can find very healthy fats from so many different sources. And what we now know from coconut oil, 50% of coconut oil is what's called lauric acid. And lauric acid is very good for your gut, but it doesn't really move that needle on burning fat for energy. MCTs make up about 18% of coconut oil. And if you steam distill coconut oil, you wind up with a concentration of these medium chain triglycerides. What are they? Medium chain triglycerides are actually very short chains of acids compared to things like in meat or eggs or even in avocados and these kinds of things. Those are big chains of fat. These are short. They're typically 6, 8, or 10 carbons long. 12 carbons is getting into the lauric acid, and that's a little bit longer, and that stays in your gut more. But under 12 carbons long, you can actually, these can just pass right into your bloodstream from the gut. And so when they do that, they get into your bloodstream and get into your cells and can help you make energy. And they can get to your liver even as MCTs without being broken into anything else. They get into your liver, and your liver can turn them into ketones and use them for energy and send them to the brain. And it turns out that even medium triglycerides passing through the gut into the bloodstream and traveling to the brain, this length, 6, 8, and 10, can get into the brain as well and be used for energy by the brain. Many people's brains are already experiencing insulin resistance. It turns out that Alzheimer's is a type of diabetes of the brain. The neurons can't take up sugar anymore. They can't take up glucose. The insulin response is muted because of an excessive amount of sugar in the bloodstream over long periods of time with poor blood sugar management. And so when what they did is they had electrodes on people's heads, and they were monitoring brain activity when they gave them glucose, and parts of the brain looked dead. But when they gave them medium chain fats like this, the neurons lit up. They could use fat for energy. So it can restore cognition in some people. You can't undo the brain damage. You can, but it takes a long time. But you can restore some functionality to cells that are still viable. And so if we start younger, if we start using healthy fats like this, we can really improve our mental capacity and our cognition. I started adding MCT oil to my coffee long before I took out the sugar. So I love coconut sugar in my coffee, and just adding the medium chain triglycerides, whether it was powder or oil, changed my brain's ability to focus and the length of time I could focus. I found it to be quite phenomenal. I found it to be quite a shift, even when I hadn't taken out the carbohydrates yet. Once I took out the carbohydrates and lowered them, it was even better. So you have the oil itself, which you can take, I would start with a teaspoon at a time, but you get up to a tablespoon, which is 13 grams of medium chain triglycerides at a time. I just kind of squirt it in now. And then the powder is taking that same fat and very finely spraying it onto acacia fiber. So here you're getting something that's really good for your cells, really good for your microbiome, acacia prebiotic fiber, and you're getting this great fiber content, and Lactobacillus plantarum, which is an amazing colonizing probiotic for the gut and helps to support histamine detoxification in the body as well. So those are two ways to take it. This mixes into coffee a lot more easily if you don't have a shaker or a mix of, any kind of a blender or anything like that. So some people keep this in the office or at work or in their gym bag or their backpack to use for those particular situations. So really good stuff. Now we're getting into some of the stuff that I really love and that have been, huge for me. The greens, the magnesium, the MCTs, and the collagen and collagen builder are just big, big winners in my household and for me personally. Collagen is a very difficult supply chain. It's leftover animal parts, things that get thrown away. They don't even get made into shoes and bags. It's stuff that our society has just learned to waste. Our ancestors ate the entire animal eventually, and people still do in the world, but typically in North America, we don't. If you do, great, good for you, and keep doing it. And so typically collagen products have just gone around to processing plants or places that even make leather from hides and just take the leftovers. They don't know where those animals came from. They don't know what they ate. They don't know what kind of, medications they were giving. They don't know what part of the world they came from. So getting a transparent and clean supply chain on collagen takes a lot of work. And we didn't launch it until we were able to do that. And the way that we can guarantee that is through Paleo Foundation certification and iGen together. The two of them help to guarantee that. So collagen, everybody has it. Everybody that is not a plant. So it is in fish, it is in mammals, it is in you. You make probably 40 different types of collagen that can be determined on a microscopic slide. And they're in different parts of your body, and they're a little bit different in structure based upon where they are. But all collagen is rich in 3 amino acids, glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline. Plants can be rich in glycine and proline, but plants do not and never will have hydroxyproline. That is something that animals use vitamin C to convert proline into hydroxyproline to be able to make all of these structural proteins that literally hold us together. Now, you can get collagen by eating all of an animal, eating all the joints and bones and skin and all of that. You can get it by making broth out of all of the leftover parts, but it's still not fully hydrolyzed. So you have to have a good digestive system. So people have been doing this for a long time, since birth. They do pretty well at that. But as most people's digestive systems are pretty compromised, what we have found in studies is that peptides, which are fully broken down into small amino acid chains relative to the big collagen proteins, they get into the bloodstream faster and therefore have more effectiveness in rebuilding tissue, rebuilding healthy tissue. Now, most of us come to collagen because of our skin, appearance and texture and elasticity, because of our nails and hair, because of joints and mobility, and some people know that it's good for gut health as well. If you can do bone broth, great, but some people still benefit from peptides, which are fully pre-digested in addition to bone broth or even instead of in certain situations. And so when we're talking about beauty, we want elasticity to the skin, we want strength to the hair and nails, you want your skin to kind of bounce back. But your body doesn't care about these things. It doesn't care about your skin elasticity. It doesn't care about your nails. It doesn't care about your hair. It has other priorities. Collagen is also used in your heart valves, in your blood vessel linings. It's used obviously in your joints, the lining of your gut, your intervertebral discs, the meniscus of your knee. All of these things take priority over how you look. So know that when you start to affect collagen, elastin, keratin, and it affects your face, your neck, your nails, your hair, that you are also affecting other internal structures in your body and improving them. But it makes a good demonstration to talk about youthful skin versus aging skin, and that it just becomes more and more difficult, and you have less and less enzymes available and nutrients available to make the elastin and the collagen function properly to keep the skin firm and elastic. Some of this we cannot completely prevent, obviously. Well, at this point, I hold hope that we can, do a lot more for this. But why we see even cellulite has a lot to do with the elasticity of the skin and the striations of these fibers within the skin and how fat shows up at the surface level. Everybody has fat. Everybody needs fat. It's how it shows up underneath the skin. And the thicker your skin is, the less this shows. The thicker your skin is, the slower you appear to age, the less wrinkles and fine lines you have. And so some people just genetically are fortunate. Those of us with thinner skin, more susceptible to sun damage, wind damage, gaining and losing weight, weightlifting even creates stretch marks and sagging skin. So some people are more susceptible to this than others. As I said, it's only found in animals, not in plants, but we can certainly use plants to support the body in rebuilding collagen. So one of my pet peeves is that there's a lot of marketing out there saying that you need multiple types of collagen. And this really, even in the research, is just not true. We could take an eggshell membrane collagen and research it against placebo, which is nothing, and see that it improves, inflammation response, that it improves the gut lining. We can take a type 2 collagen from the joints of chickens, and we can find that it supports healthy joint structure in humans. But really, I don't know that there is a study out there that really has been able to compare all the types of collagen to each other. The thing is that every type of collagen that you can harvest from an animal will be rich in glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline. There may be varying amounts of other amino acids and other cofactors, but those 3 amino acids your body can use to piece any type of collagen it makes together. So type 1 and 3 come together. They're the most abundant and the most common and the easiest to keep a transparent supply chain on. You want to find a quality source and a product that's easy to use, that tastes good, or that you can put into your diet easily, and then be consistent with it. And then you need to have certain cofactors to help you put those collagens together. So the way I think about it is like eating animal proteins or even bone broth is kind of like just getting a bunch of wood dumped in your front yard that you're going to use to build a deck. You have to take the bark off. You have to cut it. You have to plane it. You have to sand it. You need nails and screws. You have to mark it, measure it. You have to do all these things to build that deck, right? Because maybe you had a deck and it got rotten and it fell apart and you have to make a new one. But having peptides that are from animals and that, have these types of amino acids in them pre-linked, glycine to proline, proline to hydroxyproline, hydroxyproline to glycine, is like having Lincoln logs dumped on your front yard. You have pre-cut, prefab redwood deck. Everything's cut to size. Everything's labeled. All the screws are there. You've got all the tools, and all you have to do is put it together according to the instructions. That's really the difference between peptides and just dietary protein or even bone broth. So it is that sort of shortcut. Everything's kind of pre-assembled. It's like a Lego erector set versus a box of blocky Legos. You can make a helicopter out of a Lego erector set if it's designed for that. It's really hard to make a helicopter out of a box of blocky Legos. I tried my entire childhood and it just didn't work very well. So you have to have good digestion. You have to be able to break proteins into small peptide chains. You have to be able to absorb. You have to have vitamin and mineral cofactors. So most of us in this society today are so compromised that we don't do this very well. This is why the peptide market has exploded the way that it has. and is just everywhere you look, is because if you give someone peptides that are pre-digested and you give them these cofactors like silica, biotin, and vitamin C are the three most important cofactors, they have everything they need to build that brand new deck in a matter of days on their house, right? And that means you're rebuilding structures very well, very easily. Most products out there are using industry laboratory grade vitamins and minerals for this. Silica can be sand, biotin is made in a lab, and vitamin C is, you know, just a byproduct of sugar made in factories in China, you know, every single day. So our goal was to have these all coming from real whole foods. And so bamboo is a great source of silica. It's actually 75% standardized to silica. Sesbania is a plant that people in India and Sri Lanka eat almost like a salad, and it's very rich in biotin. And amla berries, that should be AMLA, it always autocorrects to alma, which means soul, that's fine. Amla berry is 50% vitamin C, and that kind of vitamin C with all of its cofactors helps you produce collagen. It helps convert more proline to hydroxyproline, and it plays a role in reassembling everything on the other side of your gut lining where you need it in the body. And here again, just like in the medium chain triglyceride powder, we're using Lactobacillus plantarum, which is a hardy strain, which allows you to drop this collagen in your coffee if you want to and still get the benefits. I wouldn't put it in boiling water, but it can be fairly hot and certainly over body temperature. What I love about Lactobacillus plantarum in collagen is some people respond to bone broth and collagen products with a histamine response. They might get a rash, a flush, hives, itchy eyes, these kinds of things, maybe even sneezing. And Lactobacillus plantarum is known to help break down those histamines in the diet. So it's a good support for people who are having those kinds of issues with certain foods. I've had problems with certain soups that have preserved fish sauce or fish flakes in them. I'll get a histamine response. So this probiotic really helps with that. We almost always put probiotics in everything, and in these particular situations with the MCT powder and the collagen, you're getting it in a type that supports the immune response. The Beauty Collagen is such a gorgeous product, and I recommend taking it later in the day, like even an hour before bed. You could add a half teaspoon of magnesium to it, and you have everything you need to make collagen and even hyaluronic acid while you sleep, while you repair. So I noticed even after 2 years of taking plain collagen in my coffee that when I took this before bed on a relatively empty stomach with magnesium in it, I saw changes in 4 days that I hadn't seen in 2 years. So I highly recommend that you get some of your collagen on an empty stomach, old-fashioned way, and that you get these cofactors if you don't have C, silica, and biotin and other B vitamins in your diet. The plant collagen builder takes those three cofactors from plants as well as some other antioxidants and puts them into a very clean tablet that you take 2 at a time or 2 in a day, and that will help you make collagen out of even your protein. So it'll even help you take plant proteins that contain glycine and proline and turn that into hydroxyproline and assemble collagen. So if you're vegan or you want these cofactors to support your plain collagen that you're taking, maybe not taking the Beauty Collagen, this is a good cofactor supportive product. So I tend to take this, and I use plain collagen in a lot of areas in my day, and I try to take this practically every day. Lots of great stuff in here, all from real whole foods. That is just the My Kind way, certified organic and non-GMO project verified. So love collagen. I've been doing it for quite a while. I always kind of up my game, and I think as I'm talking about this, it's time to get back this summer to that Beauty Collagen at nighttime with magnesium and really see what kind of photo protection I can get to from being out in the sun a lot. So beauty, stress, and digestion, let's support our bodies. Let's digest better. Let's be more beautiful. Let's be more healthy on the inside and out by supporting our digestive and immune response and managing our stress. Really, really, really important. I'm going to open it up to Wendy, who's going to help us out with questions. And I appreciate all of you who've been patient with the sound issues. I really have no idea what's going on, but I'm telling you, I live in the middle of Montana and I'm on a hotspot. And even though I'm on my phone for the audio, I'm sure there's somehow an issue. All right, Wendy, let's go.
Thank you so much, Amber. We got some really great questions coming in here. And one of the first ones that I would like you to cover is regarding probiotics and addressing products that speak about utilizing human strains.
That's a great question. It's a funny question. It's a funny concept because we get people who say, if they just ask, is this a human strain probiotic? And I always want to know kind of where they're coming from, because human strains should mean a strain that is a common strain in the human digestive system, in a healthy human digestive system, right? It doesn't mean necessarily that we're going around and taking samples from humans, but for original human research on humans, it may have come from human stool, sorry to say. And so you'll get strains that might be harvested off of plants like Lactobacillus plantarum. You'll get strains like Acidophilus that might come out of fermentation on plants, but you'll get strains that actually originally in the research were harvested from healthy human digestive systems and then grown in laboratory. So it's not like we have a matrix like, giant farm full of people that were harvesting human strains from. But it's that there's strains that would be normal in the human digestive tract, not something that is healthy for dogs, but we're going to put it in humans. It has to be normal to the human digestive tract. So that's what's important.
The next question was, how many strains does an individual need to look at in a probiotic product to maintain balance in the digestive tract?
I don't think we have a pat answer to that question, but we know that in the microbiome, the greater the diversity, the greater the health of the person. So in people that we see 1,000 different strains or species, they may not be as healthy as in someone we see 3,000 different strains or species, And in people who have a lot of ill health, we just tend to find low microbial diversity. That's really the association that we see. And in cultured food, we find tremendous diversity of strains, numbers of different strains. And that would also indicate that that would have been the normal state for human beings. So typically in a probiotic, you want to look for more diversity. The original probiotics we came out with, the raw line at Garden of Life, had 30 strains at the base coming from kefir and yogurt. As we moved into the doctor formulated line, we kept it pretty diverse by making sure there were at least 14 strains that were clinically researched, and sometimes we have even more than that. So there isn't a single answer. There are reasons for using individual single strains. I definitely know people who are doing that for very particular therapeutic benefit. But for overall health and emulating what we should get from the diet, the more diverse, the better.
You had spoken about how we include a probiotic in many of the powder products. Why is it that they do not require refrigeration?
Because we're not guaranteeing a CFU count at expiration. And we are hoping that you're going to use that product up within 20 to 30 days. And the idea is that you're getting some probiotics like you would in your food if you were eating it fresh, but it's not a probiotic product. Whereas our probiotics that are in the shelf-stable packaging, which keeps them dry, or in the refrigerator, which keeps them dry and cold, we're guaranteeing a live cell count at expiration because that is specifically in the billions of CFUs to rebuild your microbiome.
Can one take too many probiotics, and when is the best time to take them?
If you take too many probiotics, you might just have some additional bowel movements. You might have some temporary bloating or digestive distress if you take too much at once or on a given day. So it's not that it typically will cause any kind of a toxicity. Some people do that for fun, to have a cleanse. But, we've learned over the years that the millions don't really accomplish a change in your digestive and immune system. You have to get into the billions. And so that now is pretty much the standard. And then we look at how many billions of live cell count would be in fermented food. And in diets that include cultured fermented food on a daily basis, it's very easy to achieve 50 billion live cell count, CFU, colony forming units, and in many cases 80 and more. So it really depends on the culture, but throughout history, we've looked to cultures that include fermented foods in their diets and found them to be more healthy overall, more long-lived, and a longer health span. And that's our goal with probiotics, is to emulate that in a supplement.
Is there concerns with taking probiotics and other medications?
Probiotics are probably the safest thing you can do with medication, and also the safest thing you can do when you're pregnant, if you stay within the CFU count that's been studied during pregnancy, which is 20 billion, and our prenatal is designed for that. So what I love about probiotics for kids, probiotics for the elderly, probiotics when you're pregnant, probiotics when you're on a lot of medications, is that if you start low, if you start around, 10, 20 billion, 5, if it's an elderly person or someone just came out of the hospital, after radiation or chemotherapy or immunocompromised, you start low and you gradually increase it as they tolerate it, you're pretty safe. And so that's what I love about digestive enzymes and probiotics. You don't have to consider medications that you might be on. You do if they have herbals and other things added to them. Although for our mood probiotic, we specifically chose ashwagandha because we knew that it didn't have a bad interaction with antidepressants and anxiolytics.
So that leads into the follow-up where someone is saying, I had heard that ashwagandha can interact with other medications. Can you clarify that?
Well, I guess we'd have to look at what you had heard. It may be that it could, there may be other medications it might interact with, but we specifically looked into whether it interacted with antidepressants and anxiolytics. And that was kind of our goal with that, because this was a mood balancer. So I'm not really sure what medications ashwagandha interacts with. I'd be happy to follow up with that and take a look if that person wanted to give a specific example.
Can you explain a little bit more about why you shouldn't take ashwagandha when you have a hormonal imbalance like PCOS? Sorry, tongue-tied.
Yeah, PCOS. So when someone has PCOS, they're tending to convert hormones in an unhealthy way. They're having issues with the pathways. Typically, ashwagandha does cause, it seems to further that pathway, and they will get more testosterone production, more insulin resistance, and all of the symptoms that go along with PCOS. Not across the board, but typically. And you will know when you take ashwagandha if it does not agree with you, because you're taking it to relax and have a better stress response. And if you take it and it makes you more aggressive or more stressed out, you know that it's not right for you. You'll figure it out pretty quick. Everybody who says they can't take ashwagandha knows exactly what happened when they took it. And it's not that it's toxic. It's just if it doesn't make you feel more relaxed and more capable of handling stress, and it's doing the opposite, it's not right for you. And there could be many, many reasons. I've seen it in people who were secretly dealing with an alcoholism problem. I've seen it in people with PCOS. I've seen it in people who had been on birth control and other hormone therapies for a long time and hadn't cleared them out of their system. So those are kind of some situations.
All right, so moving on to some of the other products, I think there was a little bit of confusion regarding whether or not the chewable enzymes could be used by both genders.
Yes, it's kind of where we place them.
Yes.
Yes, there's no enzymes that only men, and I know that men and women are different species, and we came from different planets, but when it comes to digestion, we can pretty much take the same thing. So these digestive enzymes are appropriate across the board. And though they're not made for children, I definitely give them to my teenagers. And whenever they feel like they are a bit heavy and struggling with digestion, I love them for the elderly too, because they're chewable and you don't have to swallow a pill. The thing about drinking liquid when you just ate a meal and you're really full is that you dilute your enzymes. So having to drink an enzyme down after a big meal adds more liquid to your gut, and that makes it worse. So I would always chew some food and swallow an enzyme with that bite of food, but not everyone can do that. I love these chewable digestive enzymes. They don't require water, obviously, to get down. And they're good for all genders.
People are asking, they see a lot of gummy vitamins produced. Is that something that's a healthy way to take a vitamin?
Well, if the gummy is full of sugar and the vitamins are synthetic, I definitely wouldn't go in that direction. Gummies typically don't have as high a nutrient content simply because of texture and taste. We do make gummies that are made in like basically a fruit leather, and they have all the my kind vitamins in them. We have them in the US. I don't think you have them there in Canada yet. So really look at how the gummy's made. Make sure it doesn't have unidentified gelatin. Make sure it doesn't have tons of glucose syrup or even cane sugar and tapioca syrup. If it's very high sugar, most people just don't need that added sugar. And then you just have to look at the nutrient content and whether you're actually getting enough. I will take gummy multivitamins sometimes because they're delicious and they're fun, and I already swallowed a bunch of vitamins, but I know I'm not getting as much as if I were to take my tablets. So I gauge what my needs are in that given day or in that given week.
One more question has come in. What is the best time of day or best way to take a probiotic?
When you will remember. That is my first caution. Take it when you remember to take it. If you don't take it, it's not going to help you. You know, looking at it every night and being like, oh, I forgot to take it. It's not going to help you. There are certain probiotics that are best on an empty stomach, and but the ones that we talked about today can easily be taken with or without food. We know that they all survive transit time. They survive transit through the gut well enough because of the amount that is formulated, and the strains are hardy enough and have been tested against acid and bile both. So we know they make it whether you eat something or not. We know they make it whether you leave them in the capsule or not. Just don't take them with hot tea or hot coffee because you're actually overheating them with no buffer zone for them to find protection.
All right. So the next round of questions.
I see the person who, real quick, Wendy, I see the person who asked about ashwagandha said she was speaking particularly about blood pressure medications with ashwagandha. That I could see, and that ties in exactly to what I was speaking about. If you have hormone conversion pathways that are leading toward higher testosterone, that will lead you to higher blood pressure and other things. And so, you know, that's where they probably say there's a contraindication for some people. I think that anything that you can talk to your doctor about and start slowly, you can work with them on most things except those that interfere with certain pathways.
We have a question regarding coconut oil and the information out there. Is it good? Is it bad? Would you like to give us your thoughts?
It's good. So I think that we should get fat from anything that you can gently squeeze and it's oily. And if coconuts are like that, avocados are like that, nuts and seeds are like that, corn is not like that, soybean is not like that, and I don't eat cottonseed or rapeseed. Peanuts are not like that, you know, unless you roast them and add oil to them. So, you know, there's just places we should be getting our fats, and typically we should get them from the whole source. Coconut oil is an exception. You know, we press it and then we further distill it to get medium chain triglycerides. It's one of those more refined products that I accept in my cupboard because it's so beneficial, kind of like collagen peptides. They're so beneficial, even though they're more refined. They have a place in my cupboard at this point in my life with the diet and lifestyle that I lead.
I'm going to try and wrap a few questions in together here. Can you explain how our whole food magnesium is different from a magnesium bisglycinate?
Yes, that's a great question. So bisglycinate means that glycine, which is one amino acid, and it has to bind at 2 sites on magnesium. So magnesium has 2 sites for an amino acid to bind, or multiple amino acids to bind. And it's only fully chelated, fully bound to peptides when both sites are full. So bisglycinate refers to glycine binding at both of those sites on magnesium. And it is a bioavailable form of magnesium. It will get into your bloodstream. But when you bind it to a protein that contains multiple amino acids, you get 2 or 3 amino acids on each of those sites. And then when you get into the bloodstream, you have a multi-tissue specificity. So let's say that threonine was bound to the magnesium. You have something that's going to go more into your brain and nervous system. Or like I mentioned, isoleucine, leucine, or valine. If they're bound to the magnesium, they're going to take that straight into your muscles, and you'll get better muscle relaxation and therefore better contraction on the next exercise. So taurine would take it to the heart, you know. So there's laboratory created chelations of minerals for specific tissues in the body. This is more broad and general, the way that you would get it in a whole food. And then you have a multi-tissue specificity. So it compares. They will both be as absorbable into the bloodstream. They may just have different actions on tissues relative to what it's bound to.
If I cannot consume wheat, will I have an issue taking the perfect food?
I can't say absolutely no, but what I can tell you is that the wheatgrass, barley grass, all of the grasses that are grown by Elon the Baron and his family on that farm, they walk the pastures every single day checking the height of the grass, and they want to cut it before the blades of grass form a node, a nodule, where it's going to make a stem and go to producing a seed head. At the point that it forms a node, you're at risk of gluten contamination. And so he's been known to find a field that on, you know, several hot days, and it starts to form that node too quickly, and he'll let the field go and won't harvest it at all, so that he doesn't get that gluten contamination. So I would say that his is beyond what the NSF standard is. But the NSF standard, which is the only way that we can do gluten-free on a product that might normally contain gluten, like wheatgrass, NSF standard is 20 parts per million. The Gluten-Free Certification Organization is 10 parts per million. And if you know your science, 10 and 20 parts per million is basically the same thing. It's only if you went from 10 to 100 that it would be a significant difference. So 10 and 20 parts per million is the limit for gluten detection to be called gluten-free. If you are super celiac, super sensitive, you have to just start slowly and see how you do. But for most people avoiding gluten, they're not going to get a reaction because of the care, the way he grows it, and the testing.
Moving on to some questions about collagen. Can you confirm if there is bovine sourced collagen in the Beauty Collagen product?
It is bovine. It is only bovine sourced. Our whole goal was to use the cleanest and most traceable source possible, where we knew that the animals were 100% forage-fed, grass-fed, and pastured, and that is the Paleo Foundation standard. And that source is bovine for us, and we use the inner hides, and it's fully hydrolyzed to make the peptides. That gives you type 1 and 3 collagen.
When is the best time to take collagen, and how would you take it? Would you add it to a smoothie?
So as I said, I was taking mine in my coffee, and it was fat coffee, meaning there was a lot of fat in it as well. And it worked. It really helped me, and still does today. But I noticed faster, bigger changes when I would take it on an empty stomach. And that was the old recommendation with the liquid, terrible tasting liquid collagens that we started out with in the market, was to put them in water and take them on an empty stomach. And I do think that you get better absorption of those small peptides when it is just in water, or maybe a green powder or a green juice. That would be fine. It's not that you can't take collagen in a smoothie and in your coffee and in other things. You certainly can. But if you're trying to get results fast, if you have more or greater needs, get some of it just in water and on an empty stomach. That'll be bigger bang for your buck is basically how I'd say it.
Can someone take too much collagen?
I believe you can, and I believe you can take too much at once. I think having a ton of collagen, like 30 grams in one serving, I believe when that all gets in your bloodstream, your body's going to wonder what you broke, and it's going to initiate a repair response accordingly. In fact, in a sense, that's how it works. In a sense, when you take collagen on an empty stomach, let's say we take 10 grams, like in the beauty collagen, it's 12, on an empty stomach, and all of that gets into your bloodstream at once. And now your system is kind of going, something broke, something was injured, and it initiates a repair response and upregulates repair. And that's why it works so fast. So if you dump 30 grams, your body may have a bit of a stress reaction. And sensitive people I've heard have had that. Some people may not even flinch. If you're an athlete, if you're a bodybuilder, putting a lot of stress on your joints, you may need and may tolerate that. But if you do have high needs, like if you feel like you need 30 or 40 grams a day, I would split it up into a couple different doses. As far as too much, everybody has different tolerances. It's interesting because your bodybuilder who loves white rice, chicken breast, and broccoli every single day probably has a higher need for collagen than a strictly plant-based vegan or near vegan, because you can get plenty of glycine and proline, like I said, from a good plant-based diet. And if you're high in vitamin C, you can convert that proline to hydroxyproline. But if you're eating only lean meats, no skin, no fat, you aren't getting any glycine. You're getting high methionine, and that creates high homocysteine. So interestingly enough, that meat eater of lean meat needs collagen more than a strict vegetarian. I just find that so interesting. So too much is relative to what deficiencies you have in your diet.
Another question about collagen. I started taking collagen several months ago, and I seem to be getting more abdominal weight. Is there a correlation with that?
I don't know what the correlation would be. I'm going to have to know more about how you were taking and what you were doing in addition. You know, some people get into a healthy pattern or a pattern they think is healthy. They change their diet. They start doing CrossFit or running, and they're maybe taking collagen or something like that. And it may be that they're upping their stress response from other lifestyle changes as well. Typically, I don't hear that it put on weight. I have heard it before, but again, I've never been able to ferret out if there were other changes that they did along with that might contribute. And what I mean is that if you're already stressed or not sleeping well and you start doing a more intensive workout, you may actually increase your cortisol levels further, which will make you gain abdominal weight, even despite the fact that you're working out like a maniac. So take a look at things like that. Take a look at your overall stress response, other factors in your lifestyle. But if you are sensitive to that product for some reason, whether it's an ingredient that's in it, whether it's a processing, you know, there are different ways that different companies process their peptides, that might cause you to gain weight because you might be inflaming for some reason. It could also be a histamine response if you're super, super sensitive.
I just want to wrap a couple of questions here together for our last question. It's people asking about things like joint pain, knee pain, arthritic conditions, and your thoughts on what you can do to support increasing arthritic symptoms or helping to prevent it in the first place.
Right. So it's taken a long time for mainstream medicine to accept that even osteoarthritis is an inflammatory condition. Even if you started that process from an old football injury or something, if that injury didn't heal properly, you're constantly attacking your own body, and it's an immune response, okay? Autoimmune response. So that has to be calmed down. So things that balance out the inflammatory response are important, and that could be probiotics, that could be certain herbals like turmeric and boswellia. That can even be portions of chicken cartilage collagen, which have been clinically researched and shown to reduce that inflammatory response. So you have to stop attacking your joint, and then you have to rebuild it. And that's kind of where the confusion comes in. There are types of collagen that you don't digest that stay in your gut that help to lower inflammation. It's called UC2. It's the chicken sternum, the sternum of the chicken carcass. And you don't digest it, it stays in the gut and trains the gut to not attack cartilage in the bloodstream. So that can be a type of collagen, type 2 collagen, that can be anti-inflammatory, but not all type 2 collagen is anti-inflammatory. So you have to know what you're getting. And then, like I said, the different herbals, even CBD and different things that are inflammation modulating, your EPAs from your omega-3s, for example, all support toning down the immune system's attack on that once injured, now perpetuated joint. Then you can use collagen peptides to rebuild. And it doesn't matter, again, which type or what animal or animal part you source it from. It could be fish, it could be chicken cartilage, it can be bovine hide peptides, it can be what was I just thinking? Oh, eggshell membrane. You know, it could be any of those, but you need it in a gram amount that is big enough to get plenty of glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline. So this is why we chose a clean source. It happens to be type 1 and 3. It's rich in glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline, and it will rebuild anything in your body if you have the right cofactors and you stopped attacking your own tissues and creating that inflammation.
Thank you so much, Amber. And thank you to all of you for joining us for the last hour and a half for our presentation. If your question has remained unanswered, or if something else comes up as you're thinking about what Amber's discussed, you can please email me at webinar@gardenoflifecanada.com. Again, that email address, if you have additional questions, is webinar@gardenoflifecanada.com. So I hope all of you have a fantastic rest of your evening. And again, Amber, thank you so much for sharing this information with us.
Thanks for your help, Wendy. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for being on.
Take care, everyone. Good night.